What would you do if a 9-year-old barefoot boy in torn slippers claimed he could heal your child? And he was right. It was chilly that morning in Kigali, Rwanda. Not cold enough for mist, but cold enough to bite your skin and make your breath rise in little clouds. People moved briskly in and out of Amina Children's Hospital, wrapped in shawls, holding flasks of hot tea, walking fast like they could outrun whatever had brought them there. But one person was not in a hurry. He sat on a worn-out rice sack beside the main entrance, near the sliding doors, quietly drawing in a battered exercise book. His name was Chinedu Okoro, just 9 years old. His faded sweater hung past his knees, the sleeves rolled back twice. His left slipper was held together with a strip of red fabric. A threadbare wool cap drooped over his small ears. He did not beg. He did not speak unless spoken to. He simply sat, watching, sketching, always watching. Most Saturdays, he was there. At first, the hospital security tried to chase him away, but he never caused trouble, never shouted, never made a mess. He just smiled politely when addressed, so they stopped bothering him. Some thought maybe he had a parent admitted. Others whispered maybe he was waiting for someone, a sick sibling, a lost uncle. But nobody asked too many questions. Not in a place like that. Across the dusty street, parked behind a Boda stall, was a sleek black Toyota Land Cruiser V8. The engine hummed low, but the driver sat still. Inside was Chief Omari Ndlovu, a respected businessman in his late 40s. His kaftan was crumpled, his eyes bloodshot. His wealth showed in the shine of the car, in the gold trimmings on his watch, in the silence of the guards standing nearby. But he looked like a man barely holding it together. In the back seat sat his daughter, Zuri, 6 years old. Her hair was neatly braided, her legs wrapped under a bright orange lasso. Her large brown eyes stared silently through the window. She had not spoken since the road accident 2 months ago. One moment she was racing through the banana groves with her cousins. The next, paralyzed from the waist down. Omari opened the door and gently lifted her in his arms, cradling her like something fragile and holy. He did not see Chinedu. Most people did not. But Chinedu saw him. He saw the way the man's arms gripped tighter with each step. He saw the way Zuri looked upward, eyes fixed on the sky to avoid the hospital doors. He saw it all, and just before they passed, he stood up and said, "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again." Omari stopped mid-step, not because he was insulted, not even confused, but because of how the words were spoken. Not like a child joking, not like someone begging. Soft, certain, like Chinedu truly believed it. Omari turned slowly, his voice low and wary. "What did you say?" Chinedu stepped forward, hugging his notebook to his chest. "I said I can help her walk again." Omari tightened his grip on Zuri. "That is not funny, boy. I was not joking." There was no shake in Chinedu's voice, no smile on his lips, just calm, heavy truth. Omari's eyes dropped to the boy's clothes, the slipper sewn at the toe, the cracked school badge stitched onto his chest. A child of the street. This had to be a trick, a scam. He turned sharply and walked inside without another word. But he could not forget. Not the tone, not the calmness, not the strange way the boy had said it like it was a fact, not a maybe. Inside the hospital, he sat through hours of consultations. Therapists, doctors, physiotherapists, all repeating familiar words. Slow progress, be patient, recovery takes time, miracles are rare. But Chinedu's voice refused to fade. "I can make your daughter walk again." By early afternoon, Omari and Zuri stepped back into the sunlight. The clouds had scattered, but the chill remained. He carried her toward the car, his arms aching from worry more than weight. And then he saw him again. Still there. Same spot. Same exercise book. Except now, Chinedu was staring directly at him, like he had known he would return. Omari hesitated. Zuri's head rested on his shoulder, her breath steady. Too light, too quiet for a child her age. He turned, walked toward the boy. "You again," he muttered. "Why would you say something like that? You think it's a game?" Chinedu shook his head. "No, sir. You do not even know her." Omari's voice rose, placing Zuri gently back in her seat. "You do not know what she has suffered, what we have suffered. I do not need to know her to help. Amari stood upright. You are what, 9? 10. Exactly, Chinita said quietly. You are a street boy with slippers stitched together. What do you know about healing someone like my daughter? Chinita looked down at his hands, fingers running along the rough edge of his book. My mother was a healer, a physiotherapist. She helped people walk again. His voice dropped softer. She taught me things. She used to say, the body remembers what the mind forgets. Amari frowned. His heart pressed tighter. So you watch her do some stretches. Now you think you were a doctor? I watched her help a man walk again after 5 years in a wheelchair, Chinita replied, eyes meeting his. No machines, no fancy clinics, just her hands, her belief, her patience. Amari started to speak, then stopped. A passing nurse gave Chinita a nod. A hospital janitor tapped his broom and smiled faintly in his direction. They knew him. I'm not giving you money, Amari said coldly. I did not ask for money. Then what do you want? Chinita inhaled deep. Just 1 hour. Let me try. Amari turned to Zuri. She had opened her eyes, watching, silent. Still, he rubbed his temples. I should walk away. Chinita did not move. I should call security. Still, the boy stood, calm as ever. After a pause, Amari exhaled sharply. Fine. You want to waste your time? Meet us tomorrow. Noon. Naibigo Park. Do not be late. Chinita nodded once. I will be there. Amari carried his daughter into the Land Cruiser, started the engine, and drove off without another glance. But in the rearview mirror, Chinita was still standing there, unmoving, expressionless, waiting. That night, Amari sat at his desk. Papers scattered, numbers dancing on spreadsheets he could not read. His thoughts kept drifting to the boy, the boldness, the stillness. Zuri appeared at the door. Baba? He looked up. Yes, my girl. Who was that boy? He paused. Just someone from outside the hospital. He looked like he believed it, she said softly. Believed what? That I could walk again. Amari started. Her small fingers danced across the armrest of her wheelchair, like little legs moving forward. He did not smile. He could not, because for the first time in a long time, he felt something stir inside him. Something dangerous. Something powerful. Hope. Filled with what looked like warm millet grains wrapped in old chitinge cloth. Zeke knelt beside the mat he had laid out. Jonathan squinted. What is all that stuff? My mom used to use this, Zeke answered softly. The millet keeps heat. Helps loosen tight muscles. The tennis balls for pressure points. Jonathan folded his arms again, suspicious but silent. Zeke turned to Isla. If it is okay, can I work with your legs for a little while? Nothing will hurt, I promise. And if anything feels strange, just say stop, okay? Isla looked up at her father. Jonathan sighed. You can try, just be careful. Zeke gently knelt beside her wheelchair. He unwrapped the colorful blanket around her legs and placed a warm cloth pack across her thighs. Isla flinched slightly. Too hot? Zeke asked. She shook her head. No, it feels good. Zeke nodded and waited, letting the warmth sink in. After a few minutes, he began moving her legs very gently. No pulling, no forcing. Just small rotations. Side to side, up and down. Jonathan watched closely, ready to jump in if anything went wrong. But nothing did. You ever do this before? He asked, voice sharp. Zeke did not look up. My mama used to take me to clinics after school. She helped retired soldiers, people who could not pay for treatment. She said everyone deserves to feel whole again. Jonathan raised a skeptical eyebrow. And she taught you this? Yeah. She said the body does not always need machines, just time, attention, and belief. He tapped lightly on Isla's knee. You feel that? No, she whispered. Zeke was not fazed. That is okay. I will keep asking. He kept talking to her as he worked, asking about her favorite colors, foods, and shows. At first, her answers were brief. Then she began asking him questions. Do you live near here? Kind of. Do you go to school? I used to. Why not anymore? Zeke hesitated. My mom got sick. Then she passed away. Been trying to figure things out since then. Isla looked down. I am sorry. Zeke gave her a small, sad smile. Thanks. Jonathan's posture softened, but he still said nothing. After about 30 minutes, Zeke gently tapped her ankle again. You feel that? Isla blinked. A little like pressure. Zeke looked up at Jonathan. That is good. Jonathan squinted. She sometimes says that during her hospital sessions. Zeke nodded. Yeah, but those rooms are full of machines. Kids get scared. They tense up. But here, he gestured to the open park. There is air. Trees. Feels different. Jonathan said nothing, but he was clearly listening now. Zeke helped Isla stretch both legs, then showed her some gentle toe movements, just wiggling. Nothing obvious happened, but she did not seem discouraged. I will show you again next week, Zeke said, standing. It takes time, but your muscles, he pointed to her thighs, they still remember. You just have to remind them. Isla smiled, wider than before. Okay. Jonathan cleared his throat. We are not promising anything. Zeke nodded. I'm not either. I'm just trying. Jonathan stared at him. Then, without warning, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded bill. He held it out. Zeke stepped back. No, sir. I do not want your money. Jonathan looked surprised. Then why are you doing this? Zeke shrugged. Because your daughter smiled. Jonathan glanced at Isla. She was still smiling. And he did not understand how a child who had lost everything could give so much to someone he barely knew. The next Sunday was warmer, but Zeke still wore his old jacket. Not because he needed it, but because it made him feel close to his mom. She used to call it his helper's coat. Said every healer needs something to remind them why they care. He was already at Nigerian Park by 11:45. Towel laid out. Supplies lined up. Bottle of water nearby. A few kids played football on the grass, and someone's goat bleated in the distance. At exactly noon, Jonathan's SUV rolled up. Isla was grinning before the car had even stopped. Zeke waved. Hi, Isa. Hi. She chirped, curls bouncing as Jonathan helped her into her wheelchair. Jonathan looked tired again, but not the same as before. Less heavy. He gave Zeke a nod. No words, but more than last time. Zeke out to work. Same setup. Same warm pack. But this time, something was different. Isla was trying. Can you press your heel into the ground? Zeke asked gently. She closed her eyes, concentrating. Nothing happened. It is okay, he said softly. Sometimes the brain has to find the right path. It is like walking through a crowded market. You just have to push through. Jonathan stood behind them, arms crossed again. But now, it looked more like a man keeping warm than shutting himself off. Why do you do this? He asked suddenly. Zeke glanced up. Because I remember how it felt when my mom helped people. She made them feel like they mattered. I want to do that too. Jonathan nodded slowly. You ever think of doing something else? Sometimes, Zeke said. But this feels right. Jonathan looked at Isla. She was tapping her toes. Barely. But they moved. He said nothing. Just watched. The next few weekends, they kept coming. Same time. Same place. Zeke showed Isla how to use rubber bands to strengthen her ankles. He rolled tennis balls under her feet to help her brain remember where they were. He even showed Jonathan how to massage pressure points behind her knees, explaining how every nerve has a job, even when it goes quiet. And then came the bad day. It was the fourth Sunday. Zeke showed up as usual. But when the SUV arrived, Isla was not smiling. Her eyes were red. Jonathan looked angry. She does not want to do it today, he said sharply, lifting her into the chair. Isla refused to look at either of them. Zeke approached slowly. What happened? Isla crossed her arms. I tried to move my legs this morning, and nothing happened. Nothing. I'm tired of trying. It is pointless. Jonathan looked away, jaw tight. She has been frustrated all weekend. Zeke nodded and knelt beside her. You think I never get tired? She said nothing. You think I never sat in a shelter, crying, when my mom could not buy medicine and I could not do anything? Her eyes shifted toward him. You are allowed to be angry. I get angry too. But if you stop now, the part of you that wants to walk might stop trying too. She stared at the ground. I do not want you to give up, he said gently. Because I have not. Silence. Then Isla whispered. I am scared. Jonathan turned sharply. It was the first time she had said that aloud. Zeke leaned in closer. Me too. But scared does not mean stop. It means you are close to something big. Isla wiped her eyes. Okay, let us try again. And they did. Zeke guided her gently, with fewer words this time. Just presence. Just patience. Jonathan stepped in more, too, helping her shift her weight, encouraging each tiny movement. Then, after 30 minutes, Isla moved her right foot. Not just a toe, her whole foot. It slid forward. Slow. Stiff. But it moved. Jonathan knelt beside her, blinking like he could not believe it. "Do it again," he said. She did. Zeke smiled, but said nothing. Just sat back and watched. That night, Jonathan stood outside his house on Kasairu Ridge, staring at the moon. He had stopped asking himself who Zeke really was. That question did not matter anymore. Inside, Isla was giggling, retelling the footslide story to her aunt over the phone. For the first time in 6 months, their house did not feel like a hospital. It felt like home again, but something deeper had shifted, not just his daughter's legs, but the weight in Jonathan's own chest, the guilt, the pride, the wall he had built between himself and the world. It was cracking. On Monday afternoon, Jonathan sat in his office, staring at an untouched contract. His phone buzzed, emails, calls, updates, but none of it felt urgent anymore. What kept looping in his mind was that moment in the park. Isla's foot moving, like it belonged to her again. He had seen it with his own eyes. And the boy who made it happen was a 9-year-old with torn slippers, and a name he had never even asked for. He opened his laptop and slowly typed, Ezekiel Okoro. In Birmingham, nothing came up except a few scattered mentions, old newsletters, school records, and a couple of notes about Ezek and his mother, Monique Carter, at a community clinic. No current address, no recent news. Jonathan closed his laptop and leaned back. This kid was like a ghost, but somehow he was very real. By Saturday, they were back at Harrington Park, but everything felt different. Jonathan showed up with an extra mat and a fold-out chair. When they arrived, he quietly handed Zeke a sandwich and placed it beside his gym bag. Zeke nodded a small thanks and set it aside for later. "Ready, Isa?" Jonathan asked. She gave a big thumbs up. "Let's do it." They fell into their usual routine. Heat packs, stretches, toe flexes. Today, Jonathan joined in fully, sitting cross-legged on the grass and doing each movement along with them. Zeke grinned, even messed it up once. Jonathan shot him a side eye. "I haven't stretched since college." They laughed. About 20 minutes in, Zeke leaned forward. "All right, Isa, let's try something different." He pulled a belt from his bag and placed it under her knees, showing Jonathan how to hold each end. "She's going to try lifting both knees now, just a little." We held balance. "She controls the movement." Jonathan blinked, unsure. "You sure?" Zeke nodded confidently. "She's ready." They gave her a few seconds. Isa's brow furrowed, eyes narrowed. She grunted softly, and then her knees lifted slightly. Barely an inch, but they lifted. Jonathan stared in stunned silence. "You did that." Isa smiled proudly. "I did it." He swallowed hard. "You really did it." Zeke's eye stayed on the belt as he nodded slowly. "See? The body remembers. You just have to be patient enough to listen." Jonathan looked at him. "You're something else, kid." Zeke didn't respond. He simply helped Isa through the next stretch, gentle and steady. After the session, as they packed up, Jonathan crouched beside Zeke. "Where do you go after this?" Zeke shrugged. Jonathan lowered his voice. "You got a place to sleep?" Zeke hesitated, then answered, "Sometimes." Jonathan exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "You ever think about staying with us?" "For a while." Zeke's eyes widened. "You serious?" "About a guest room. You wouldn't be in the way." Zeke looked down at his hands. "You sure your neighbors wouldn't mind a kid like me?" Jonathan laughed softly. "Man, after what you've done for my daughter, they'd better not say a word." Zeke didn't answer immediately, but Jonathan could see the wheels turning. The next morning, Zeke stood outside Jonathan's house with his backpack slung over one shoulder and a rolled-up blanket tucked under his arm. Jonathan opened the door in sweatpants, coffee mug in hand. "Right on time," he said. Isa ran down the hallway. "Zeke." Zeke smiled. "Hey, superstar." Jonathan stepped aside. "Welcome home." The days that followed were quiet but full of meaning. Zeke got his own room. A soft bed, clean sheets, a small desk. He didn't say much, but he never missed a morning stretch with Isa. She was moving both feet now. Not walking yet, but the wheels were turning. Her brain was reaching out to her legs, reconnecting. One night, as Jonathan cleaned dishes, he paused and leaned on the counter. "Zeke," he said over his shoulder, "have you ever thought about going back to school?" Zeke, sketching at the kitchen table, glanced up. "Sometimes." Jonathan nodded. "You're smart. You could go far." Zeke tilted his head. "I want to help people walk again, like my mama did." Jonathan turned to face him. "Then let's figure out how to get you there." They didn't say much more that night. They didn't need to. For the first time in years, the Reeves household wasn't full of silence. It was full of small noises that meant life: footsteps, laughter, scribbles, and healing. It started with a nurse from the Children's Medical Center. One Sunday morning, she was walking her dog through Harrington Park and spotted a familiar face. Isa, outside her wheelchair, smiling, lifting her knees, moving her toes. Standing beside her was the same quiet kid who had once sat by the hospital doors every weekend. The nurse didn't interrupt, just watched from a distance for a while. Then she went home and told her sister, who worked in patient services. A few days later, a physical therapist at the hospital mentioned to Jonathan, "Hey, someone told me ISA's improving. Is that true?" Jonathan nodded. "Yeah, thanks to someone we weren't expecting." Word spread fast. The next time they showed up at Harrington Park, 2 other families were waiting by the big oak tree. One with a boy who used a walker, another with a girl recovering from stroke. Both parents had heard about the kid who helped Isa move her legs again. Zeke looked at Jonathan. Jonathan looked back. "You don't have to." Zeke adjusted the strap on his bag. "I want to." He gave up his usual time with Isa that day to work with the 2 new kids. He showed their parents how to use towels for stretching, how to warm rice packs just right, how to encourage without pushing too hard. He talked to the kids, not at them. "You're not broken," he told one. "You're just learning a different way to be strong." Isa watched everything from her wheelchair, hands folded in her lap, never complaining. Later on the drive home, she said, "I like watching him help people." Jonathan glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Yeah, it makes me feel like I'm part of something good." By the next weekend, 5 families showed up. The week after, 11. A local pastor brought folding chairs. A nearby diner started dropping off bagels and coffee. Someone printed flyers. Free movement classes Sundays at noon, Harrington Park. They never mentioned Zeke's name, but everyone knew who it was. A local reporter showed up with a camera and notepad. Jonathan pulled Zeke aside. "You okay with this?" Zeke looked around at the families, the kids moving their limbs, Akla laughing with a girl on a walker. He nodded. "As long as it's not about me. It's about them." The story ran on the second page of the Birmingham Sunday Post under the headline, "9-year-old with a gift helps dozens heal in a city park." They didn't share his full name. Zeke asked them not to, but people found out anyway. A local doctor offered to mentor him. A nonprofit asked if they could fund some equipment. Someone else offered free tutoring. For the first time since his mother passed, people didn't just see Zeke, they saw him. But Zeke never bragged. He still laid out the towel the same way every Sunday. Still wore the same duct-tape boots. Still checked in with Isa first before helping anyone else. The park that once echoed with silence and sore bodies had become a place filled with movement. A boy who had no home had become the heart of something bigger than himself. It had been 9 Sundays. 9 Sundays of towels on grass. Of Isa's knees lifting higher. Of small victories shared with strangers who had become something closer to family. But this Sunday felt different. Zeke could feel it before they even pulled up. The air was warmer. The trees swayed slower. Even Isa was quieter, focused, like she was preparing for something big. When they arrived, a small crowd had already gathered. Nothing loud or flashy, just families setting up folding chairs, therapists kneeling with kids, parents with hopeful eyes. Right in the middle was the worn bench beneath the oak tree. Zeke unpacked silently, rolled out the towel, and gave Isa a look. "You ready?" She nodded. No smile, just that serious, determined look again. Jonathan wheeled her to the center of the mat. Zeke knelt in front of her. Same as before, he whispered, "We help you stand. You do the rest." Jonathan moved behind her and placed his hands under her arms. Zeke guided her legs gently into place. Okay, he whispered. On three. She closed her eyes. 1, 2, 3. Jonathan lifted. Zeke steadied her knees. She stood. Her legs trembled. Her arms shook. But she was standing. The crowd fell silent. Some kids gasped. One mother clapped her hand over her mouth. Isa opened her eyes slowly and smiled. I'm standing. Zeke blinked back tears. Yeah, you are. Jonathan froze for a second, as if he couldn't breathe. Then he let go. She stayed up. He stepped back, shaking. She's doing it. Zeke stepped back, too, just a little. She's been doing it. Isa took one shaky step, then another. And then, because she was 6 and brave and didn't know how to be afraid, she took a third step, all on her own, before falling into her father's arms. He caught her, laughing and crying, his hands trembling as he held her. You did it, he whispered. You really did it. Isa turned to Zeke. You said I would. He gave her a small grin. I said we'd try. That afternoon, nobody left the park in a hurry. People stayed, talked, hugged. Some prayed. Zeke sat back on the bench and watched it all. He didn't say much. He never did. Later that night, Jonathan stood in the kitchen while Zeke poured cereal into a bowl. You know, you changed everything, he said. Zeke didn't look up. I did. Jonathan walked over and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. My daughter walked today, not because of a hospital or a doctor or a miracle drug. She walked because a kid with nothing decided to show up again and again, even when nobody asked him to. Zeke nodded. That's what my mom would have done. Jonathan's throat tightened. I wish she could have seen this. She did, Zeke said softly. Jonathan looked confused. Zeke smiled. She saw it in me. And somewhere between the quiet kitchen lights and the stillness of the night, hope grew. A hope that even when the world forgets you, there's a way to stand again.